كيف طريقة تصنيع المادة المخدرة. فور اكزامبل نحكي عن الهيروين نستخدم، يعني هي طريقة طبعا حاطين الكميات انه ممكن انه كثير ببساطة انه نستخدم الافيون تتحول لمورفين باستخدام الاستيك انهيدرايد، وبالتالي للهيروين بدي استل مورفين بعطينا الهيروين، وبرضه ببساطة جدا بالهيدروكلوريك اسيد بحصل على الهيروين هيدروكلورايد. هنا تصنيع الكوكايين، طريقة تصنيع الكوكايين باستخدام البريكورسرز اللي هي سلفوريك اسيد بداية من الكنابس، وبيتا سوبر مانجانيت من البيس تبعتها، بعدين بننتقل للكوكايين وكوكايين هيدروكلورايد كمادة مخدرة نهائية. هنا LSD مؤثر عقلي باستخدام الارجوتامين، الجوبترين والازيجيك اسيد بالمثلث هذا زي ما بتلاحظوا بهي الكميات ممكن نوصل لمادة LSD. هي البريكورسرز كيميكال بريكورسرز عادة أكثر الناركوتيك والسايكوتروبيك سبستانسز اللي هي لاحظوها عالميا وأسهل شكلها على تجار المخدرات في عملية تصنيع المخدرات هي كانت الأمفيتامين تايب ستيمولانت. أكثر شيء كان سهل عليهم إنه يصنعوا الأمفيتامين وميث أمفيتامين، بيستخدموا بالإفدرين بسودو إفدرين، بيستعملوا كمان 1 فينيل 2 بروبانون، مادة مش كثير متداولة عالميا، لكن مجرد ما إنه في استهلاك كبير على هاي المادة تبين إنه في something wrong، في هناك شيء غلط بصير بهاي المواد بحيث إنها تصنع الميث أمفيتامين. طبعا احنا بنسمع في عنا كثير شباب يمكن بتوقع انه بيعرفوا بالكبتاجون الاكسيتاسي، هي عباره عن حبوب مخدره عن طريق استخدام السلائف الكيماويه بتم ضبطها عن طريق تصنيعها الغير مشروع. طبعا هي يمكن هذا سكتش انا حطيته بس عشان يبين قديش خطوره وجود السلائف الكيماويه واساءه استخدامها في التصنيع الغير مشروع، كيف عمليه التهريب بتتم، لانها عمليه تهريب الحبوب صفت يمكن كثير اسهل من عمليه تهريب نفس الماده المخدره عبر الحدود وتصنيع هذه الماده المخدره في الدول المحدده لهيك، وبالتالي بدأت توزيعها للدول الثانيه المستهلكه عبر مرورها عبر الدول احنا الرقابه على السلائف الكيماويه لمنع التحويل او اساءه استخدام البريكورسرز السلائف الكيماويه واستخدامها في تصنيع الغير مشروع للمخدرات والمؤثرات العقليه. طبعا هنا مش حيتم هذا السيستم الرقابي الا عن طريق تعاون طبعا كافه الجهات المعنيه فيها، اللي هي في كثير 3 جهات رئيسيه اللي هي جوردن فود اند دراج ادمنستريشن are responsible to control over precursors and anti-narcotic department and the customs. بهذه الحالة تعاون أو cooperation of 3 organizations it will decrease the trafficking of the shipments of the chemical precursors through our country. القوانين في الرقابة على السلائف الكيماوية بدأت في اتفاقية التجارة غير مشروع، اتفاقية الأمم المتحدة للتجارة غير مشروع بالمخدرات والمؤثرات العقلية، وبناء عليها احنا بقانون المخدرات والمؤثرات العقلية ما كان لحد 2003 ما كان أي في رقابة قانونية على السلائف الكيماوية، وتمت هاي في عام 2003 لما تعدل قانون المخدرات والمؤثرات العقلية بإضافة مادة بتخص رقابة الكيميكال بريكورسرز أو السلائف الكيماوية حتى نقدر ننطلق قانونيا من خلال هاي المادة، وأصدرنا بناء عليها تعليمات لمراقبتها والمعنية فيها طبعا كل الشركات بما فيها الشركات الدوائية ومصانع الأدوية. نظام المراقبة في عنا نظام المراقبة زيه يعني ما بيختلف صراحة بصرامته ورقابته وشدته زي رقابة الأدوية المخدرة والمؤثرات العقلية. في عنا نظام الاستيراد والتصدير، في عنا تبادل المعلومات، في عنا الريبورتنج سيستم، ريكوردز، الاستيميت، كل هاي طبعا بالكوبريشن مع INCB International Narcotic Control Board. في هناك عمليات سرية، هون بنحكي على العمليات الدولية السرية اللي هي بتخلينا نضبط الشحنات المشبوهة اللي بتنقل من دولة إلى دولة. وهي العمليات السرية الدولية بتتم عبر برامج إلكترونية خاصة بين السلطات المعنية برقابة السلع الكيماوية بطريقة سرية، بمعنى إنه إحنا مربوطين مع بعض. أنا ممكن أكون على جهازي تجيني إيميل بإنه في شحنة حتصدر للأردن باسم الشركة، بالشركة هاي باسم الكميات وبالتالي أنا مطلوب إني أنا أعمل تحقق انفستيجيشن على هاي الشركة حتى أتأكد إنه فعلاً هي مسجلة وقانونية والشحنة اللي جايبها فعلاً هي لاستخدام مشروع. في النظام الجديد حتى تم تسجيله في الهيئة الأمم المتحدة اللي هو البيكس اللي هو بريكورسر انسيدنت كوميونيكيشن سيستم. برضه هذا نظام الكتروني بيتبع شحنات اول باول على الشحنات اللي عليها ملاحظات بالنسبه انه في شكوك انها مشبوهه. هون ببين الاحصائيات، يعني يمكن هي 2008 ما قدرنا نعملها ابديت بخصوص استيراد وتصدير الكيميكال بريكورسرز. بنلاحظ انه ما عندنا اي مشكله، الكميات مش كثير، هالكميات الكبيره يمكن بدها سوبرمانجانيت بين فتره والثانيه وسنه والثانيه بترتفع. في عندنا هون ال1 فينيل 2 بروبانون كان في فتره معينه الاردن كان اكبر مستهلك له، وكانت هي قضيه شائكه صراحه، بس احنا يعني كان قرارنا انه احنا وقفنا استيراد هاي الماده للاردن ومنعنا وحظرناها لانها صارت تعمل شبهه لسمعه الاردن بخصوص التعامل فيها، لان كل الكميات تشحن كانت كمواد مصنعه على العراق. في عندنا هنا السولفنتس اللي حكينا عنها بالنسبه للسلفوريك اسيد، مش كميات يعني منفذه. تولومير هي اغلبها شركات بتكون في المنطقه الحره، وفي اغلبها كميات بصير تصديرها للدول المجاوره. أنا كنت حاطة كيس ستاديز على البريكورسرز كيف بصير انفستيجيشنز، يعني السلع الكيماوية شيء مش معروف بالأردن كان بالنسبة للشركات، فأي شخص بحب إنه يحاول يطلب من الشركة برا باسمه الشخصي أو باسم شركته بطلب شحنة، فإحنا فورا زي ما حكيت لكم إنه بتبادل المعلومات السرية خلال أنظمة إلكترونية نبلغ بهاي الشحنة. فإحنا لما نسأل المستورد أو الشخص ما نوصل له أو ينكر، في بعض الحالات الكيس ستادي إنه بينكر الشخص إنه هو طلبها، بعدين بعد ما جبنا الدوكيومنتس من الدول المصدره وتابعنا مع الامم المتحده عملنا انفستيجيشنز عليها فتبين انه فعلا هو طالبها، لكنه بتفاجئ انه كيف عرفنا، ولما نسال عنها بخاف عرفنا كنترول او ماده مراقبه لها علاقه بتصنيع المخدرات بنسحب، لكنها فعلا هاي كان في كيس ستدي عده حالات صارت معنا انه عملنا انفستيجيشن، شيء ما كان يعرف انها كنترول، شيء لما عرف انها كنترول هو كان جايبها للعراق بطل، في شيء كان خاف طبعا، كان بده يجيبها ومش عارف لوين بده يجيبها وعلاقتها بالمخدرات، لما عرف تراجع وبطل يتعامل فيها. يعني هو الملخص الكونكلوجن كثير بسيط، بانه زي ما بنحكي انه رقابه السلع الكيماويه مش بالاردن مش هالبيج ديل، لكنها فعلا شيء كثير مهم، انه احنا الارض ارض عبور، واحنا برقابتنا لازم نكون حريصين لا تستغل ارضنا لمرور هاي الشحنات وما في عندنا اي تصنيع، وبالتالي كل ما رقابتنا كانت اكثر رقابه عليها كل ما توفر الادويه المخدره ومواد عقليه للتصنيع الغير مشروع للاستخدام غير مشروع بتكون اقل. شكرا، كان خلص الوقت اللي عندي اشياء ثانيه بس شكرا. إذا في أي أسئلة؟
أي أسئلة؟
Thank you for your lecture, Dr. Leila Badran. Concerning, you didn't mention or have you discovered, yeah, this is the question, have you discovered any locations in Jordan that they produce illegal drugs from such precursors during your inspection? Because I'm sure there should be.
You mean using the precursors in Jordan for production of narcotic and psychotropic?
Yeah,
No.
Apart from
No. I think it is not easy thing that to be used the chemical precursors in Jordan, but the most important issue is that the Jordan territory is used for passing the most of important shipments of precursors to around the country. I think so, and in specific interval, I think so, before 15 years, I think, and another interval before 12 years, it was concentrated to a journal to be used for passing most of important, especially for acetic anhydride, for around the country. You know, in the Middle East, there is around our Syria, Iraq, I think there is no evidence that there is the industrial manufacturing of the chemical, narcotic or psychotropic substances. For some country, I think there is suspicion, but it is not suspected, but it is not, there is no evidence till now. But in Jordan, absolutely no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hiyam, for this information about the precursors of narcotics and psychotropic drugs. We'll move to our next lecture. Actually, we'll switch gears. Our next talk will be about management, but management in CROs that conduct bioequivalence studies in Jordan. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mohammed. He's the Executive Director of AGDIMA Biocenters with PhD in Medicinal and Biological Chemistry from University of Toledo, Ohio, USA, and a fantastic record of publications, 30 publications in peer-reviewed journals.
Okay, good morning. First, I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to give this presentation about different subjects, mainly about CROs. So I'm not going to talk about scientific research, mainly like contract research organizations. I don't know if it's really good or bad actually to have this presentation after talking about narcotics and abuse and how to prepare narcotics from precursors. Anyway, I'm not going to give any recipe about manufacturing narcotics. I would also like to welcome Dean Early and colleague from University of Toledo. Actually, I'm proud to be one of the alumni of University of Toledo. I wish you guys a very nice day in Jordan. Okay, my talk will be about contract research organizations, CRO, that are conducting BE or bioequivalence studies. We'll talk about the quality management system and the regulatory compliance of these CROs actually to international guidelines. If I start with the drug discovery and the journey of the drug since actually or from the time of discovering the drug entity or a candidate of a drug entity till we get to the approved drug by registering such drug in the regulatory authorities, we start in research laboratories to find out candidates for such drugs. These will go definitely through testing and screening to evaluate their potency and their good potential for treating certain diseases or conditions. If it passes this step, definitely will go into extensive preclinical studies on animals to test the effect of these drug candidates on animals and cells and explore the toxic effects, if any, or the safety of these medications. Definitely, if actually it passes this phase, we move to the clinical phases and studies on humans. We have, as you know, different phases of clinical studies. Start with phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1, we do it on healthy volunteers, followed by phase 2, which is actually a little bit on more subjects to do the dose-response relationship as one of the major pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic studies. And then actually we move to phase 3, which is usually done on thousands of patients to explore the efficiency, effectiveness, and safety of the medication in certain indication. After that, actually, and after successful evaluation of these studies, we register the drug in the regulatory agencies, and definitely after that, certain safety and effectiveness studies will follow, like phase 4 studies and safety surveillance and the periodic safety reports of such medications. So we start with usually a large number of candidates for the drugs, and these will get less and less whenever we go to like a further step during the development of the drug. So we start in the lab for the pathogenesis of the disease and the basic research and the drug discovery. Then less number of candidates will move to the preclinical study, and less definitely will pass the clinical studies to end up with one or sometimes none of these medications will make it to the market. So if you're lucky, you end up with one good candidate that will make up all the expenses the company actually spent on such discovery of these medications. This diagram will give you like numbers or the expenditure of the R&D in different international companies in their journey of discovering and approving medications in the last like 15 years. And this will show you that it is really expensive to get a medication approved, to discover a medication and have it approved by the regulatory authorities, and it takes actually a long time to do that. So we have a regulatory bottleneck that if we consider this pathway we talked about as a pipeline, then we have a high number of drug candidates get into that pipeline to end up with a few candidates proven to be successful medications or successful drug candidates. So it's getting more difficult and more complex for industry to go through this pipeline for different reasons. So it's a complex scenario. We have a lot of regulatory requirements. So we're talking about intensive regulatory process. There is demand for higher quality clinical studies. So a lot of emphasis now on the clinical studies, and we need to prove everything by doing a clinical study. And now the clinical study with the GCP regulations has strict guidelines, and always we are seeking for high quality studies. Qualified clinical investigators are not easy to find. Shortage of human subjects is also another problem facing the pharmaceutical industry. We'll be talking about reliance of pharmaceutical companies on CRO to do these studies, or to contract these CROs to do the clinical studies for these medications. And as I explained earlier, it's going to be a long process for the development and approval of these medications. How to overcome these problems that are facing the pharmaceutical industry? We're talking about pharmaceutical industry working on streamline and integrate the discovery and development of several products, actually not only one molecule. Another approach is to depend on offshore destinations to do the clinical studies. So instead of doing the clinical studies only in Europe or the States, actually these companies looking for other, let's say, we call it cheaper locations to conduct the clinical studies. Of course, we'll talk about these conditions. Another approach is to outsource some of the functions and duties of these pharmaceutical companies to CROs or universities to do these functions and duties. So they give them to more specialized entities to do these functions. And this will give you an example about the number of clinical studies performed offshore or like in distant locations for several international companies. Whenever a company chooses a location to conduct a clinical study, there are like several factors to consider. We're talking about the cost efficiency. We are talking about the relevant experience available in that country, talking about the patient pool for that disease that we're going to use the medication for, and of course the infrastructure and environment, the laws available, and the regulatory conditions in that countries. All these combined will either encourage or discourage the company to conduct these clinical studies in a distant country. What are the advantages and benefits of outsourcing? We're talking about more focus, business focus, because we're talking about a specialized CRO or a specialized entity that will conduct that clinical study. We're talking about reducing the cost, so the company is not going to have to hire all those clinical investigators and the clinical team and the data management people, statisticians, all those people who are required to conduct such a study. This will enable the company to use worldwide resources. So if this CRO is well known with its experienced CRO in a certain country, I can just go and use its services. I don't have to have them as part of my company. And this definitely will lead to an improved service in conducting these studies. In short, you are switching from lengthy, expensive, and risky process and very much have it quick, less costly, and established a process by outsourcing such services. When we talk about services, we have different types of services that can be outsourced. So we can talk about R&D outsourcing, and this is also done by pharmaceutical or big pharma companies in order to give them more like time to commercialize and to market their products. So if they need more than one product to be on the pipeline, they can make one or two, but definitely they're going to depend on other organizations to buy these new molecules. So CROs can be like a person or can be an organization that the sponsor will contract to perform a specific service that was supposed to be done by the sponsor himself or the company itself. This kind of relation and actually collaboration started the beginning between the industry and the university. So this was the major paradigm, or let's say collaboration that exists, industry, university. And of course, this model has advantages and disadvantages. Some of the advantages that we are talking about, very specialized labs, especially if we're talking about basic science, basic research, and this will do like mechanisms of actions or pathways. We're talking about highly qualified personnel in that lab. So it's always good to have that collaboration, especially at the beginning of the drug discovery process. But we're gonna admit that we also have shortcomings and some disadvantages, that we're talking also about a community with less stringent or less strict regulations and compliance with the guidelines. We're talking about scientists, yes, they are available, but they are spread all over different universities. They are not only in like one, you cannot find them in one location. The regulatory environment you have in these universities, or let's say in some, I don't want to just generalize, but this is the case with most collaboration between the industry and the universities. that the regulatory compliance or compliance with the regulatory requirements is usually is less than what you find with what we have now between the collaboration between industry and the CROs. So, industry CRO outsource model is now taking place, and we can outsource, or pharmaceutical companies can outsource different services to these CROs. We have different types of CROs, from preclinical studies to clinical studies to any type of service actually the company like to give or to outsource to these organizations. So this is just a comparison between the industry CRO collaboration and industry university collaboration, and we'll summarize most of the points I talked about. So we're talking about the regulated environment that is more actually with the CRO. The time frames also is more respected, let's say, or actually CROs are more compliant with the time strings. I'm not compliant with the time, so they told me that I have just a few minutes to finish. So let me just skip most of these, which I already talked about, the types of CROs that are available to provide different services and the regulations that are governing these CROs, and just give you an example of CROs that provide the bioequivalence studies, which is mainly required for the generic industry. And this is actually what we do in addition to clinical studies. This is what we do in Academia Biocenter. So we do bioequivalence studies to prove that the generic medications are comparable to the originators. To do such studies, we need a CRO that is highly equipped with qualified instruments, hiring very qualified personnel with high technology. So the scope of service should be defined, and it's good to have all the departments required for these studies under one roof. The related experience in this field to conduct a bioequivalence study is also required, as this experience will be really helpful, and the know-how is highly appreciated in this kind of research. The financial stability of the CRO is also good, because you're gonna deal with this CRO for years to come whenever you do these studies. Delivery of the service, you are looking for quality, and you are also looking for time for these projects. Track record, again, how this CRO will deal with different issues and problems facing the CRO is also a plus. The know-how, again, and the track record, and what studies been performed in the center is one of the major things to be considered by any company whenever they want to perform these studies. The infrastructure we're talking about, and increasing regulatory requirements. Regulatory requirements are increasing more and more with every day, and that's why you need an infrastructure that can be compliant with these regulations. We're talking about the surveillance or the synchronized actions or the access doors, the highly tech machines and instruments that are used. These are very expensive instruments, and their qualification and validation is expensive in order to do such qualified studies. It's just like to show you the use of the space and different departments in a bioequivalence center. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to talk more about the quality management system, but actually, if we take care of the resources and the process and the customer, this is what will make a distinguished CRO. just last slide to show where we are on the international map. Actually, 3 major locations known for the clinical studies or CROs. We're talking about India, Jordan, Canada, and the European Union. In Jordan, we have or we do these studies with low cost, so relatively it's lower, or the cost is much lower than what you have in Western countries, a little bit more expensive in what you have with India. And by this, I would thank you again for attending and for your patience. I'll be happy to answer any question.
Actually, we have time for a few questions.
Hi, regarding just your titles, you are CEO in Actima, right?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You are CEO in Actima.
Yes.
My question is regarding your presentations. Do you have any cooperation between Actima and any university, school of pharmacy in Jordan for the research and the discovery of the new drugs? Because I know this from your presentation, you have technology now, but no research programming between any university and Actima.
Actually, no. We have a lot of collaboration with different universities. Not only that, actually we have graduate students also doing their research in Actima Biocenter. So at the level of a graduate students, collaboration with universities, with graduate students, we do have that. And we have also several research projects in collaboration with different universities in Jordan.
I think this is
And not only Jordan, also like other countries around.
If you, I think that you're aware regarding what's going to be happening in 2015, just from the WHO for the agreement we call the Strip and Triple Plus. Trips and Trips Plus.
Okay.
For the patency. And now I think Actima, because you have high technology organizations, you have to have this the infrastructure of the Jordans to register all this formula of the Jordanian pharmaceutical company to be this under.
Yes, actually, part of what you have mentioned is just like duties of pharmaceutical companies. For us, we provide the services and the studies required to register different types of medications. Yeah, yes, you're absolutely right. Nowadays, we need studies not only for oral medications, but also for topical medications, for eye drops, for several dosage forms that previously these studies were not really required in this area. But nowadays, yes, more studies are required, more infrastructure and high-tech instruments are required, especially with the biosimilars and biological drugs. This is going to be a big issue in the coming few years. Thank you.
Thank you for your lecture. In my question, you said the outsourcing companies that are doing such research, since which year they started doing this? This is my first question. The second question, you said these outsourcing companies concentrate or take into consideration the cost, the relevant expenses, the patient pool, regulatory conditions, and infrastructure environment. Can you explain more about regulatory conditions and infrastructure environment? Do you mean regulatory conditions? The less, the strict, the better for doing such studies. Thank you very much.
I'll start with the second question because I can easily remember this question. No, with regulatory requirements, actually, we're not looking for less stringent and less strict countries. These companies will be looking to countries where you have defined laws and regulations to regulate and govern these studies. So because we're talking about GCP and you need some regulatory body to govern these studies. One of the advantages we have in Jordan that we are the only country in the Arab countries that have clinical trial law. So we have a law that will very much explain the roles of the clinical investigators, the rights of the volunteers and the human subjects will very much make it evident or like explain the regulatory requirements with every study. Regarding your question of like when this collaboration or outsourcing starts, I don't have like a definite answer for that, but it's been always present since history. But nowadays we have, let's say, specialized centers for these services. Previously, when we say contract, I defined contract research organization could be a person, that you find this person with good experience to perform this function, and as a company, you outsource this service to that person. Nowadays, we have well-defined, big international CROs that are able to do these services.
Yeah, just a comment. This means you are doing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 for new products by cooperating with international.
Yes, the law will permit doing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 studies, but under certain conditions. Like any study we do needs the approval from the Jordan FDA, which will also study the medication and determine about its safety to the human subjects. So it's not random. We have IRB with the center. In addition to that, we have like a central IRB or a committee in the Jordan FDA that will study each case by case.
Yeah, because our law allows this.
Yes, we
Yes,
have all
thank
of
you
that.
very much.
Okay, we would like to thank Dr. Muhammad for this interesting talk about the bioequivalence and contact research organizations in Jordan and in general. Because we're running late and we are actually behind the schedule, we'll postpone the next lecture, which is the Prof. Mu'tasim Taha lecture, to the after coffee break. So we would like to thank you all for being with us for this session, and we invite you to the coffee break, and we'll resume our lecture with Dr. Mu'tasim Taha after that. Thank you so much.
Speaker for this session is Dr. Mu'tasim Taha.